Welcome to Creepy Enigma. Find a comfortable spot, place your phone to the side and just listen. Take a deep breath and let your mind drift away. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now close your eyes, breathe slowly, and let the story pull you deeper into the shadows. It was the last weekend of October, a Saturday, right before Halloween. That year, Halloween actually landed on a Tuesday, so all the big celebrations were happening on Saturday night. My friends and I didn't have solid plans yet. Everything decent seemed to be sold out. Ideally, we were hoping to land a house party. We had put together some funny costumes, and it felt like a waste not to use them. My friend Mia took the initiative and posted on her Instagram and Snapchat stories, asking if anyone knew of parties happening that night. That's something I'd never do personally. I'd feel awkward and desperate, but I was glad she didn't mind. To my surprise, not long after, she texted our group chat, saying someone replied. She even shared a screenshot. It had the party address, start time, and some rules. It mentioned that the gathering would stay inside, no going into the backyard, that you had to bring your own drinks, and that every guy had to bring at least one girl. The invite came from a guy our age that Mia sort of knew through mutual friends. Supposedly a few people we were familiar with were also planning on going. The house was just one town away, super convenient. The four of us, me, Mia, Lauren, and Danielle, met at Danielle's place first since she had an empty house. We pre-gamed there while getting ready, waiting for confirmation that our guy friends were also going. Once they texted that they'd head over, we ordered an Uber. Between us, we had drinks like seltzer shooters and a couple of tall cans. The driver probably hated us by the end of the ride. When we pulled up, there were cars parked everywhere. The place itself was big with a wide front yard. As a group of 4 girls walking in, I figured whoever was throwing this party would be happy to see us. We didn't hear any music until we got close, then the bass hit us. Inside, the first room opened into what looked like a mix of a living room and kitchen. The house was lit mostly with orange string lights, giving off a Halloween vibe. It was fairly crowded, but we didn't recognize many faces. Mia started texting to check if our guy friends had arrived yet. That's when some older man approached us. He introduced himself as Mark said. He was the father of the host, a guy named Ryan. I asked a little about Ryan, where he went to school and such, but Mark just waved it off, saying Ryan was around somewhere, and I'd meet him later. He asked if we wanted to keep our drinks in the cooler, then led us into the kitchen. 3 giant coolers full of ice and cans were already there, so we dropped ours in. Mark looked to be in his 50s. It made sense if his son was supposedly hosting, but it still felt odd how involved he was. He floated around the house, mostly chatting up girls, and he definitely seemed drunk himself. We started a beer pong game with some random guys. Meanwhile, Mia told us our friends were still on the way. Then suddenly Mark shouted my name, and Mia's across the kitchen yelling about shots. Danielle and Lauren looked annoyed, so I asked if he could pour for all of us. He agreed, lined up some tequila, and we all downed one. I gagged without a lime. At this point, I was definitely tipsy. Mark's whole vibe was strange too, eager, too pushy, with drinks too out of place among college-aged kids. He asked what we liked to drink, and after we answered, he started mixing cocktails behind the counter. We went back to finish our beer pong game, where I quickly plugged my phone into a nearby outlet. Because my battery was running low, it didn't even charge though. The outlet was dead, and I didn't feel comfortable leaving my phone around, so I just pocketed it. Halfway through the game, Mark returned with drinks for all of us, served in red cups. Mine was a vodka soda, which I sipped slowly. Already drunk, I didn't want to overdo it. Not long after, our guy friends arrived. But from there, everything blurred fast. I remember chatting with Jeff, then blackout. The next thing I knew, my friends were shaking me awake in a car parked outside my house. My vision was spinning. My head felt off, not like normal drunk, but strange. One of the guys walked me to my door before leaving. My parents were asleep inside, so I just stumbled to my room, feeling nauseous and dizzy in a way I'd never felt from alcohol. Checking my phone, I saw texts from an unsaved number. It started with me sending my name. Then the replies came. Mark, followed by, "You looked so cute." The timestamp showed it was during the party. After that, nothing for 2 hours. Then, where did my favorite girls go? I couldn't believe I gave him my number. I must have been way more out of it than I realized. Still, I passed out right after. The next morning, hungover and unsettled, I checked again. The messages got worse. Around 2 a.m. he had sent, "Where are you? I'm coming over. You left something here." Then, "I'm outside. Come to the door." Then, "Hello? Are you awake?" He even called 3 times. I screenshotted everything and sent it to the group. That's when the others reminded me. By the end of the night, Mark was all over me. My friends noticed I was basically out of it, so they pulled me away. As we were leaving, 2 police cars pulled up, probably over noise complaints. That's when they realized the house was completely unfurnished, just empty space with tables and people. One of our guy friends later traced the number. It was a VoIP number, basically fake. He also said that with my number, Mark could easily find my address. That made me feel even sicker. No one had ever actually met Ryan, the so-called son, Danielle suggested. Maybe I'd been drugged, and honestly, that explained everything. The dizziness, the blackout, it all fit. We decided to report it. At the police station, we explained everything and showed the texts. The officer asked if this was related to a vacant house party reported the night before. That confused us until he clarified neighbors had called in complaints, but the place had been empty for months. We were stunned. A detective took our statements and the fake number, saying they'd try to trace it. After that we left. I blocked the number, but the whole thing haunted me. Weeks passed with no updates, no arrests, no word back. Just the terrifying thought that this man went as far as creating a fake house party in an abandoned home, pretending to have a son and preying on young women. He drugged me and maybe others, and as far as I know, he's still out there. This happened only a month ago. If anything changes, I'll share an update. I can only hope the police find him before something worse happens. This is a memory from my childhood that has always unsettled me. I must have been about 7 or 8 years old. Normally, my mom would take my brother and me trick-or-treating, but one particular year after school, she dropped me off at my friend Dylan's house instead. The plan was that Dylan, our other friend Marcus, and I would go together. Marcus and Dylan were both a year older than me. I first met them while playing with my brother in the neighborhood. They both lived just a few streets away. Dylan's home life was always a little unusual to me. His older sister, who was already in her 20s, seemed to take care of him more than anyone else. She always had different guys over whenever I visited, and she never acknowledged me at all. The house always smelled like cats. Dylan's father wasn't around, and his mom worked out of town a lot. I only saw her a couple of times. Anyway, that evening, my mom dropped me off at Dylan's, assuming his mom would be the one taking us out. I said goodbye and went inside, where Marcus was already waiting. Each of us had big pillowcases ready for candy. That's when I found out neither Dylan's mom nor his sister would be coming with us. I felt uneasy about it, knowing my mom would never have approved, but at the same time, I was excited at the thought of being out on our own. By around 5 p.m., we started our rounds, going door to door. A lot of people asked if we were by ourselves or where our parents were, and Marcus always gave the same answer, that his mom and sister were just up ahead. Everyone seemed to accept it. We planned on staying out late, since the next day was Saturday and we had no school. After a couple of hours, we returned to Dylan's house for a break. He heated up a few frozen pizzas, and we ate while watching Halloween specials on TV. At the time, I remember being jealous of how much freedom he seemed to have. Looking back now, I'm thankful for my strict parents. Eventually, Marcus's mom came to pick him up, but Dylan and I decided to head back out for another round. By then it was dark, probably after 8 p.m., and far fewer kids were out. We started going down blocks we hadn't visited earlier. Some houses didn't answer their doors at that hour, and others commented about how late it was. That's when we noticed a man walking slowly behind us pushing a stroller. We figured he was just another parent taking his child out. As we went from house to house, he got closer. He was softly humming and shushing, as if to calm the baby. When he caught up to us, he greeted us and asked how the night was going. We said it was good. He told us it was getting late and that he was heading home, but had candy left over to give us. Dylan and I exchanged a look like we'd just gotten lucky. Dylan asked what kind, and the man said he had bags of different treats at his house. He explained that he hadn't been able to hand much out, since he'd taken his daughter around instead. There was indeed a small bag hanging from the stroller, but the stroller itself was completely covered. He told us his daughter was asleep inside, and he didn't want to wake her. Then he pointed down the street and said his house was just a little further. We followed as he pushed the stroller, and he picked up his pace. The streets were almost empty by then. On the way, he made small talk, asking us about school and what part of the neighborhood we lived in. Every so often, he'd lean over and talk in a high-pitched voice to the stroller, then glance back at us with a smile. When we reached his house, he rolled the stroller inside first, then held the door open and told us to come in. Dylan went ahead of me. I asked if we could leave the door open, and he hesitated before saying, "Sure." He said he'd grab the candy bags and push the stroller further into the living room. I whispered to Dylan, asking why the candy would be all the way in there. He didn't answer, but instead walked toward the stroller. He lifted the cover to peek inside. Immediately his face changed, and he rushed back to me, whispering urgently, "We need to go." Without another word, he bolted for the door, and I followed as best as I could with my heavy candy bag. We had barely gotten out when a woman's voice called out, "Hey, wait." A neighbor came running toward us and asked if we knew that man. Dylan blurted out the truth that he'd offered us candy and was pushing a stroller with a fake baby inside. I remember shivering when he said it. The woman quickly told us the man didn't have a child. She said she'd seen us walking with him. She then led us to her car and drove us each home looking back. I know it was risky to get into a stranger's car, but in that moment we were terrified and didn't question it. She came up to my front door to explain everything to my mom. After I recounted every detail, my mom was horrified. She sent me to my room while my parents called the police. They never told me what came of it afterward, probably to protect me. But from then on, I wasn't allowed at Dylan's house anymore. I still saw him at school occasionally, but our friendship was never the same. It was Halloween night back in 2016. My parents asked me to be in charge of giving out candy to the trick-or-treaters. My mom had gone overboard like always, and bought way too many bags of sweets. I already knew most of it would end up sitting around the house for weeks, and I'd be the one mindlessly snacking on it. Even though I was trying to cut back, I always told her she bought way too much, but she never listened. We lived at the end of a small cul-de-sac that usually didn't get many kids. Still, there were a few families who came every year, because they knew we handed out a lot of candy. Since Halloween fell on a Monday that year, I had the whole day free. I was in college, and that semester I didn't have classes on Mondays or Wednesdays. I spent the first part of the day at the gym, then worked on assignments. By around 4 p.m., I started hearing kids outside, which meant trick-or-treating had begun. The first time the doorbell rang was sometime between 4 and 5. From then until 8 p.m., it was the usual routine, opening the door, handing out candy, and dealing with my dog, Milo, barking every single time the bell rang. In total, we probably had no more than 15 kids come by, which was pretty typical for our street. Since it was a Monday night, things wound down quickly. By then, I'd gotten a good chunk of my schoolwork done, eaten some of my mom's leftover stew, and gone up to my room to watch a couple of episodes of a show I was into at the time. I was about 2 episodes in when I heard the doorbell again. Milo started barking like crazy. I glanced at the clock. It was around 9:30. Definitely too late for kids to be out trick-or-treating. I went downstairs and looked through the glass of the storm door. Standing there was a very tall figure in a clown costume wearing a creepy mask. From the build, I could tell it was a grown man, not a kid. He was holding a brown paper bag that looked mostly empty. He waved at me, then pointed to the bag like he was asking for candy. I didn't open the door, I just said through the glass, "Sorry, we're out," and shut it quickly. I locked it right away. The second I did that, I regretted answering at all. At first I thought maybe it was just a teenager messing around, or maybe even a parent who had worked late and was taking their kid around last minute. But the guy I saw didn't look like a teenager. He was way too big, and the costume made him look even more intimidating. Thankfully, I hadn't grabbed the candy bowl before opening the door, so he didn't know I was lying about being out. I stayed by the door listening for him to walk away, but I didn't hear anything. Instead, he rang the bell again. Milo went crazy barking. He was a little terrier, so his bark wasn't exactly scary, and I knew he wouldn't actually defend the house if something happened. I picked him up, turned off the downstairs lights, and carried him upstairs. I shut him in my room so he wouldn't keep barking. From the top of the stairs I listened. That's when I heard the storm door being forced open. There was a loud snap, sounded like the latch had broken. Then came knocks on the main door, followed by the doorknob rattling. At that point, I was beyond unsettled. I ran back to my room, shut the door, and texted my family group chat about what was going on. Nobody answered. I thought about texting my guy friends to ask if it was them messing with me, but none of them were tall enough to be the person I saw. I tried to focus on the show again, just pretending it wasn't happening. What else could I do? A few minutes later, the doorbell rang again. My stomach dropped. I told Milo to be quiet and kept the blinds shut tight. I didn't want him to know what room I was in. I called my dad, but he didn't answer. Then I called my brother. He picked up but was obviously with someone, probably a date. I told him to check his texts. There was some guy in a clown mask outside who wouldn't leave. My brother brushed it off as just a Halloween prank and told me to ignore it. He didn't seem concerned, so I hung up, hoping he was right. After a few minutes, the doorbell didn't ring again. I finally started to relax, thinking maybe it was over. I lay back down, turned off the TV, and let the room go completely dark. Before long, I drifted off to sleep. I don't think I had been out for more than a few minutes when Milo woke me up with low growls and little warning barks. He was staring at the window. I listened carefully and heard faint thumping sounds, along with what sounded like something brushing against the glass. My bedroom was on the second floor, so no one should have been able to be outside my window. But curiosity got the better of me. I went to the blinds and pulled them open. What I saw made me scream. The man in the clown mask was right there, on the other side of the glass, staring in. He tilted his head at me. I bolted out of the room with my phone in hand, slammed the door to my parents' room, locked it, and dialed 911. I could barely get my words out to the operator. I was shaking, my voice breaking, and I kept begging them to send police quickly. The dispatcher repeated that officers were on the way, but every second felt like forever. When the police finally arrived about 10 minutes later, they searched around the house. The latch on the storm door had been snapped just like I thought, and by my bedroom window, leaning against the side of the house, was my dad's ladder, the one the man had pulled out of the shed to climb up to my window. After that, I packed up and went to stay at my friend Ryan's house for the night. To this day, I don't know if it was just some horrible prank, or if that man had something much darker in mind. Either way, it's not something I'll ever forget.